once you rebuild yourself once, you can't be afraid to take risks to rebuild yourself
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you're chasing a dream or chasing a career or chasing a love, like you're gonna have to rebuild yourself in every phase of your life. So it's important to have that resilience to keep getting back up, because you have that thought inside of your head, the fear of failure. What if I try and it doesn't work? You feel like you should have it together. You feel like you're putting blocks on top of blocks and everything's kind of working out, and then it falls for no reason, because that's just life. Life just
Exactly.
falls apart sometimes, and it's completely out of your control. And you have to remember that you are the one that continues to pick up those pieces and place them back together. No one else is going to do it for you,
No.
especially when you're an adult. No one's going to hold your hand and do that for you, but they'll listen. They'll be there to support you, but they're not going to do it for you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by Crazy Ant Media. Today's episode is all about rebuilding your life, picking up the pieces after they all fall apart. Whether it's with a relationship ending, losing a job, surviving a loss, or just realizing that you want to start over. We're super excited to have this conversation, and
Oh
as
yeah.
always, I'm joined by my co host and father in law, Dustin. How are you today?
Doing great. Doing great. I am in the middle of rebuilding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm doing really, really well. I'm excited for this one because, I mean, oh boy, this is a subject we can both talk on pretty extensively. So this is going to be a fun one, no doubt about it. And I think this is going to help a lot of people. This is going to do like really, really, there's a lot of people that are going through similar situations no matter what the cause was, and I think just talking about it and letting them know they're not alone is going to be huge.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because, like, when you think about rebuilding your life, that's a very daunting, big task. And what that really means, it's not a one-time fix. It's
No.
an ongoing process that you have to continue working towards every single day. I know I mentioned in the last episode the book that I'm going through right now, The Atomic Habits by James Clear. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to set small habits to where inevitably it will help me continue to grow as an individual and be really just better at self-discipline, because you and I both are very back and forth. I feel like wishy-washy when it comes to trying to do things that are good for our mental health, for our physical health, and like we'll be really good. But then we're like, oh, we'll take a day or two off. Then that turns into like a month. And it's like trying to make sure we stay on the right track, because it can be a process to get back on the saddle, to get back to where you want to be. But I mean, for example, starting over after moving to a new city where you know no one. You and I have both done this multiple freaking times, together and separate. But I'll talk about first moving down to Mississippi for the first time at 19 after leaving Indianapolis, because I didn't see anything else happening there. I didn't see any growth happening with my friends around me. Everybody was kind of just staying in the same place, and I was destined for special things. I know this now. So to have that like confidence, to have that inkling inside of me, I knew
Yeah.
at 19 at least. And I was terrified. I was terrified to come down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and completely restart. One, it's a completely different dynamic. It's a completely different
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
I'm leaving behind everything that I've known for the past 19 years. My friends, my family. I did have some family down here, thank goodness, because without them, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like I said, terrifying because you're lonely. You don't have your friends. You're trying to figure out what's what. You literally need a GPS for everything. So it's a lot. It's a lot to try to rebuild yourself, especially after moving to a different place, right?
Yeah. I think I think the comparison that I'd like to make as far as my life goes, I feel like my life is a game of Jenga. Okay? I'm not even going to play, y'all. I felt like, okay, I was born and my life was going, and then dad died. We're out of there. We're moving to Florida. Doing pretty good. Got some really good friends establishing. Mom don't want to be in there. We're out of there. Back to New York. Okay, we're going to reset. We're going to start. Everything's going to be okay. I guess this is where it's going to be. We're going to Louisiana. And then we get to Louisiana and all this. Look, be it moving, I have lost count how many times I have relocated and had to start over in a new place. Losing people in my life, family, friends, whatever, through loss, death, relationships, losing relationships in my life. I have, it's like I said, it's a constant game of Jenga. I feel like my life is finally where I need it to be, and then it collapses, and I've got to start all over. And yes, it's really hard. Especially if you've got a really solid foundation and you have built something really good, and then circumstances that you just have no control over bust that up. Right? It's
Hmm.
one thing if you're making the decision to do it. It's another thing if you're having to rebuild the life because somebody else has decided to fuck it up. And or not somebody, something, whatever the case. It's a really difficult thing, and I like that you touched on. I think the most difficult part, because I feel like this is true, not always, not 100% of the time, but the majority of the time, when you do start that rebuild, you're doing it alone. For whatever reason, the people that were there are not there now, and you feel like you're all alone and nobody's there with you, and this is a struggle that you know you're destined to have to do alone. And that's the scary part about rebuilding. It's like you know, because you kind of are on your own, and it's like what do I keep from the shambles that I want to bring into this new thing I'm building, and what do I not want to keep? What did I want to keep, but it's gone anyway? You know, and then of course, what's coming in, right? That's unexpected, and so yeah, it's a very difficult state of mind to try to navigate. Yeah, I'm right there with you, and for many different reasons, right? And it's not just relocating physical places, but it's also the mental challenge of if you lose somebody in your life or if a relationship didn't work out, whatever the case may be, to have to start over. It's daunting.
Yeah, for sure. Or like when you enter in a relationship, like for example, when Emily and I started seeing each other, I was a completely different person. And, we come from two drastically different walks of life. So to have that dynamic to try to, I really feel like it's two bricks hitting each other, right?
Right,
And
right.
then the more and more hitting that happens, the closer and closer the bricks get, and then you lay down that foundation and you can put the bricks down. So to have that time, that ability, and that resilientness, that's the big word, the resilience to be able to continue going back to the drawing board, to continue picking yourself back up, to continue loving someone after you've had bad arguments, disagreements, or fights and words that you want to take back. It's the resilience that you have to keep getting back up, rebuilding yourself, rebuilding your relationship every single time so that, like you compared life to Jenga, so you can keep putting blocks on top of the thing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep moving forward because there's so many different blocks that come your way that are very unexpected that you have to learn where to place. So that can be very freaking difficult. Or when you move out somewhere to finally chase the dreams after so many years of putting it on the back burner, and then me just trying to figure out what I want to do in life. Freaking, I don't even know, 22-year-old, I guess. And then COVID shuts down. The entire world shuts down.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
one of those things where you continue to have to rebuild yourself every couple years, I feel like.
Well, and I think that's why I made the comparison to like a game of Jenga, because no matter how well you're doing, there's always the risk of something coming in and knocking it down. And I mean, that's just life. That is, sometimes maybe not. Sometimes it'll just wobble a little bit. You'll be all right. But sometimes a COVID or whatever will come in and knock it down, and it's nothing you can do about it. And you have to I like the word resilient, like you said. You have to be resilient to rebuild. But we talk about this all the time in all different types of aspects of life and career and he said you can when that thing comes a falling down and you've got to start the rebuilding process, you've got two options. You can let that be it and destroy you, or you can lay it down and start again. And that's all on you. I'm not saying that's an easy decision to make, because mental health does play huge into whether you're capable of being resilient enough to start over or have you had enough. And we tragically see a lot of times people take their own lives where they've had enough and they just don't have it in them to rebuild again. And that's what this conversation is all about. That's what we're trying to get out there. It's like, no, you're not alone, and you're not alone to rebuild. There are other people going through what you're going through, and to remember that. But yeah, I mean, I think your whole life you're really building. You're always trying to find who you are or what you're meant to do or who you're meant to be. Even when you think you have it all figured out. So and then it's okay, this is who I'm meant to be, but at what level? And then at or where at or with who? So even when you think you have it figured out, and it can be really hard sometimes. Like the moving, I made the reference to all the moves. When I was younger, that sucked. That was difficult. And obviously going through the loss. We talk about loss on this show all the time, and that is difficult and still lingers. But I think the most difficult thing for me, the two most difficult rebuilds in my life, and it is what it is. And like you said, you have to be resilient and overcome it. I have truly been in love in my life twice. Both crumbled. Both were awesome pieces of Jenga, majestic looking, beautiful things that tumbled and completely destroyed where I thought my life was going, who it was going to be with, where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, and so when something like that happens, the first time it happens, you think I can never get past this again. It will never be, and then it does, and then you're back up, and to have it tragically fall again, you are pretty skeptical about trying to build that phase a third time or a fourth time. You're like, maybe this ain't it. But you have to be resilient because if you don't rebuild, and look at it for like natural disasters. When a hurricane hits or a tornado hits, you basically, that's your life. That's your mental
Mm-hmm.
health. You only have two choices. You rebuild or you're done. And so rebuilding is a necessary step in reclaiming your life and your happiness is the ability to rebuild. Doesn't mean you're not going to fail. It doesn't mean that it won't happen again. It just means that you have to be, like you said, resilient enough to keep fighting through it. And that, not always hard. Not always easy to do.
No, it's definitely not. And it's important to remember that you do have a support
Oh,
system. You
without
have
doubt, yeah.
friends, you have family, you have community that are always there for a conversation, at least, because when you hold all of that inside, that's when things get buried and
Mm,
that's when things get suppressed and that's when it's hard to rebuild and you keep going through your same normal routine and that makes it difficult because once you establish those small routines that are everyday things, once like a dramatic, catastrophic event in your eyes happens and it throws everything off, it's hard to even get back to those small
it
routines,
is,
as
yeah.
like even as simple as taking a shower. So it's very important to, after something big like that happens, have a conversation with somebody in your support group, and then also get back to the small routines, get back to small little tasks that help you put one foot in front of the other through every single day. And then reminding yourself to be patient and reminding yourself that it's okay to not have it all figured out, because nobody ever has it all figured out,
No.
even if they're going through a really good point in their life. So don't hold yourself back. That's the biggest thing. It's
And I
okay to go
think
through your process, but don't hold yourself back.
and I think the single biggest threat to knocking down your Jenga tower is comparing it to somebody else's Jenga tower.
Yes, every
You are
time.
inevitably going to see that thing fall if you are constantly looking at someone else's and going, well, they're further ahead than I am. They have more pieces than I do. It's not your Jenga tower. Your Jenga tower is different. And you have to be okay with that. And like you said, know that you don't have to put those expectations on you, because shame is a big part of failing. It's, I
Mhm.
should have had this by now. I should have had that by now. Why does this person have this and I don't have? Or making the decision sometimes to knock it down and start over. You feel guilty for doing it. Making that decision to end this relationship, or you feel, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And you can't allow those type things to hold you back. You just, like you said, you can't hold yourself back. And I really like what you said about the small routines to ground you. I'm going to reference the grounding as your foundation. If you have a solid foundation, you know who you are as a person, you know your heart, you know your morals, you know this. No matter how many times the rest of it falls, if you're rebuilding on that, you're always going to be okay, right? So it is those small routines. Make sure you're grounded and that your foundation is solid, and no matter what happens, you will be able to rebuild as long as that foundation is okay. And that's where the support system comes in. That's key, right? Because that's part of a solid foundation, is to have the right people around you.
Yeah, completely agree. And you have to remember too that once you rebuild yourself once, you can't be afraid to take risks to rebuild yourself
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, especially if you're chasing a dream or chasing a career or chasing a love, like you're gonna have to rebuild yourself in every phase of your life. So it's important to have that resilience to keep getting back up, because you have that thought inside of your head, the fear of failure. What if I try and it doesn't work?
Right.
Or that shame, should I have even had it, or have I gone too long with not having it all together? So I mean, you have so many different instances where you feel like you should have it together, you feel like you're putting blocks on top of blocks and everything's kind of working out, and then it falls for no reason, because that's just life. Life just
Exactly.
falls apart sometimes, and it's completely out of your control. And you have to remember that you are the one that continues to pick up those pieces and place them back together. No one else is going to do it for you,
No.
especially when you're an adult. No one's going to hold your hand and do that for you, but they'll listen. They'll be there to support you, but they're not going to do it for you. So that's very important, because I feel like a lot of times we, as a society, not you and I, rely on a lot of other people to do things for us. And when you're not a self starter, not a self motivator, that becomes difficult. And then you put that burden on other people, which it's not their weight to carry. So you have to be self reliant on your own stability, your own mental health, to help yourself get back to a point where you want to be. Because if you don't want to help yourself, how do you expect someone else who's not living your life to help you put the pieces back together?
And that's a really solid point, because if you fall into the trap of having other people build your tower, you become so reliant on that, you don't understand that you are slowly dismantling not only your tower but their tower.
Yep.
And they're the ones who are likely more oblivious to that than you are, but that is the truth in nature. Inevitably their tower will fall because they've ignored something while helping you build yours. And that's not beneficial for anybody. The other thing that I think is really important, because you're gonna go through ups and downs in life, where you do have to start over, or you do have to make an adjustment. Let's not always say it's a full rebuild. Sometimes you just realize where you thought you were gonna place it. Oh, that maybe just move it a little bit this way, right? Change the path just a tad here, just a tad there. And I think it's important to remember that most people walk away, choose not to rebuild, or give up right before everything happens, right before
Hmm.
the tower is perfect, right? And there is no perfect, but you get what I'm trying to say here. It's all about understanding the process and not walking away from what you know is what you want. Not walking away from the life that you are destined to have because you're scared that you've had to rebuild it a couple of times, or change it here, or relocate it there. It's and most people who are successful will tell you they were a day away from walking away when it hit. Right,
Yep.
right. And that's true in relationships, that's true in health, that's true in just basically every aspect of your life, be it career, relationship, whatever. It's the people that walk away right before it gets good, and you got to hold strong for that. Rebuilding is part of the process. It's all about finding the little nooks and crannies, and hanging in there because it's meant to be. It's very important because, I mean, like I said at the top of the show and throughout, if you let that one crumble stop you from rebuilding, then you're never going to get where you're destined to be.
Completely agree. And I mean, some of the tools that we use and that we know people who have used in the past to help themselves rebuild. I mean, the first one, making a realistic plan with small steps. Like I said earlier, it's very important to get back to a normal, grounded routine, whatever your routine is. So, taking those little baby steps to get out of bed, take a shower, brush your teeth, make phone calls, take the interviews, all these things to get back to the simplicity of life will help you navigate when you get back to the complexities of life. So, simplicities first, and then ease your way back into the complexities. That is very
Absolutely.
important.
And
Um,
what's
Go
also
ahead.
important is defining a moment, right?
Yes.
A lot of people think that when something happens to them, it's this. But in reality, it's actually this. But you have
Hmm.
framed it in a way where it will be detrimental to you. So, using exercises like CBT, which is basically you take a moment and you redefine it as to what actually happened to you. Stop looking at it this way and look at it this way. And
Yep.
so instead of a crumble, it's a shift. And that's extremely important because you can get into whether or not something was actually true and detrimental, or whether you viewed it that way and you caused it to be that, as opposed to what it really was. So that's extremely important. And when you can't quite figure that out, you're just not getting it, get somebody else to help you clarify it. There's nothing wrong with reaching out for help. We talk about this all the time. Therapy. It used to be like this horrible word, this thing nobody wanted to be. It's not. Everybody should have a therapist. Everybody should have somebody they can go, I just don't get it. Help. Right?
Completely agree. Yeah. And I mean, once you find a therapist or like a support group, you will find other like minded individuals who may have gathered tools that you didn't even think about. So,
Yes.
I mean, you could always volunteer, take a class, just be around people who are going through the same thing. It definitely helps. And, we're big fans of journaling. So, write your next chapter, even if you don't know all of the pages yet. Try to write down your steps that you want to do and kind of thought provoke it to where like okay, this is a little roadmap of where I want to be. And then also give yourself permission to rest. It's okay. It takes energy, rebuilding does. And rest is all a part of the work, that is for sure. But it is a special day because we did get in some emails about this, so that's always very fun. We do want to start off with Carlos. He is from Austin. He says 3 years ago I lost my restaurant in the pandemic. For
Mm.
months, I felt like my entire identity was gone. I had no idea what I was without it. I started small, cooking for friends and then catering tiny events. Now I run a food truck with my brother. It's not the same, but in some ways it's better. Starting over taught me I'm more than my job.
Mm,
That's absolutely amazing because sometimes you think you have a dream, but then don't even realize that it's just a version of a dream that you're
exactly.
trying to set out and chase. Like you're still cooking, you're doing something amazing, and you're making memories with your brother. So that is amazing, Carlos. I'm happy for you, man. It's not always going to be the same, but it seems like you have found happiness in this new route that, we have been put on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's sometimes what it's all about, right? It's not necessarily a full rebuild, but a shift,
Mm-hmm.
right? He didn't start all over with like that's not my career anymore. It's just a shift in what the career was. And that's okay. Yeah, I love that. Our second one, I can relate. Hi, Logan and Dustin. I'm Jen from Oregon. Last year, I left a 10-year marriage that was slowly breaking me down. Moving out at 38 was terrifying. I had no furniture except my bed and a coffee maker. But piece by piece, I made a home and then I made a new life. I still get scared sometimes, but I'm proud of myself. Thank you for your show and for reminding people like me that rebuilding is possible and that I'm not alone. Yeah, that's a scary moment, especially at an older age, having to start all over with nothing. But the fun part of that goes back to what I was saying about reshaping what it looks like. Don't look at it as this, redefine it as this. That's fun. It's like I can start over. You know what? I didn't like that furniture any. I always wanted to go with this decor, or maybe I hated that. Maybe I want an espresso machine instead of Mr. Coffee. You can look at it and redefine it as a way to make it something positive out of something negative. And I think she did that. I think she describes that really well. It's about piece by piece, she built herself back up a home. And I'm betting it's more of a version of the home that she wanted as opposed to the home that she had. Otherwise, that home wouldn't have been breaking her down. So it's little things like that. Just how you define things that happen to you in life. Understanding that your life is not over. It's just a shift. It's just a reset. It's just a, hitting pause and then rebuilding. And yeah, I think that's really important. Good job there, Jen. I'm proud of you. And you are definitely not alone.
That is for sure. That is for sure. Well, thank you, Carlos and Jen, for sending in your emails. We really appreciate it. And we want to encourage our audience for a little participation. Where are you in the process of rebuilding? We would love to hear what you're working on and what you're dreaming of starting fresh with. Email us at info@crazyantmedia.com and feel free to, whenever, add us on X, Threads, Twitter, it's Blue Sky, whatever you're on, we're on as well. So please be
Yes.
sure to do that. A little tools and resources. We got a few books out there for you to read if you would like. We got Rising Strong by Brene Brown, Finding the Encourage to Get Back Up. We got Option B by Sheryl Sandberg
Mm,
and Adam Grant about rebuilding resilience after loss. And of course, we have some beautiful apps as well, like Trello, which is organizing goals and tasks when you're overwhelmed. And of course, Headspace for calming anxiety and staying present during traditions. And then you also have a few journal prompts, right, Dustin?
absolutely, everybody, guys and gals. Hit pause. Go get your notebook, pen, and write these down because these are good ones, okay? Here's what I want you to do in your journal. I want you to pick one thing in your life that you would like to rebuild, or as we've said, reimagine. Look at it at a different way. I bet you've got one thing in your life right now that you totally would like to see different, whether rebuilding it or reimagining it into something else. So try that one. Another great one is, what's one fear that's keeping you from doing that rebuild or that reimagine, from getting it started? Look in and go, what am I scared of? What happened to me that's making me scared? And get past that. Like, figure it out, decide what the block is, and then move on. And journaling is a great way to do that. And then the last one for you this time, write about one small step that you can take just this week towards your rebuilding process. What just one small thing that's that first slide into the new tower, right? And I bet there's something out there that you've always wanted to do or maybe didn't think you could do that you're realizing now you can, and that's your first little slide into your new tower, and you're beginning to rebuild. So a few journal prompts. Have fun with those, and journaling is always such a great thing because it always makes you think. Right when you reset, pause, and go, oh, okay, yeah, So yeah, I love it. I love it.
For sure, man, for sure. And of course, to recap some key points in here, rebuilding isn't easy, but it is definitely worth it. Fear, shame, and guilt will show up throughout your journey, but they don't have to run the show. Remember that. And you don't have to do it all alone. Please remember your support system, your friends, your family, your loved ones, and us here at Crazy Ant Media. Be sure to email us at crazyinfo@crazyantmedia.com. That's for sure. And then our call to action to this episode is give yourself permission to dream about what comes next, even when you just take a tiny step forward. And we want you to take that tiny step
Yes.
forward. So please, please, please be sure to do that. And as always, everybody, thank you so much for listening today. We appreciate all your love and support. This podcast is, of course, dedicated to anyone who has ever had a uphill battle with mental health. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but it's important to remember to always get back up because we are here for you. If you
Yes.
have any thoughts, comments, concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. Like I said earlier, info@crazyantmedia.com. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, Threads at Everything's OKP. And of course, subscribe to the Apple Podcast, Spotify, and the YouTube account at Crazy Ant Media. And of course, you can find this podcast on YouTube. Like the button below. And as always, everybody, remember that everything's okay.